Today we're going to be installing this Minn Kota trolling motor on this beautiful beaver tail skiff. Specifically, this is a 24 volt, 80 pound Minn Kota Riptide Terrova with the iPilot link. We are of course going to be using a quick release bracket in this install. So this is our RT17 quick release bracket. Heading sensor for the spot lock. Cabling, charging cables, mounting accessories, and our remote control. Jacob is going to get us started on the install. He's going to get the quick release bracket put on this motor, and so I'm going to hand it over to him.
So to start off with mounting the quick release bracket on this Minn Kota Terrova, we have to take both of these side plates off. After removing the side plates, we have to flip the trolling motor over and we have to install this puck. Take your puck, release it, pull the outer piece. You want to align it with the holes on the trolling motor, and you want the holes facing towards the front of the trolling motor with this part facing on the back, so because of clearance issues. So it will not work, the trolling motor will not work having it mounted this way. For mounting the bracket onto the trolling motor, you're going to want to use the shorter bolts that they provided. This can be a tedious process. There are more than one way to do it. You may drop the washer a couple times while getting this going. Get it set on there, get your Phillips, turn it a couple times, and she should grab. Now with the quick release bracket installed, I'm going to mount the side panels back on with the screws, and then we will have our finished product for this part of the install. Now we have the quick release bracket and side panels back on. We're going to move on to the next part of the project, which is mounting the puck of the trolling motor onto the bow of the boat.
This part of the installation, I think, really requires you to kind of step back, be patient, because I think this is the most important part. This is where we're going to basically map out where this guy is going to go. So the first thing we want to do, we need to get this thing up here to start gauging everything, is we're going to run our blue 2-inch painter's tape over the entire work surface for a few different reasons. First off, we don't want to damage the brand new boat, and also when we run our pilot holes for the mounting bolts, we're going to need that blue tape down there so we don't get any of the gel coat splitting or cracking when we run the drill bit through. Other concerns at this point, basically we're going to get it up on top of our blue tape, then we need to take a look at a few considerations, all of them related to clearance. So the first and obviously most important clearance item we're going to deal with is the inside of the U-channel, where she's going to come up and travel down, and basically where the vertical clearance is going to be here. From where your finger is on the inside of this U-channel here to the extreme outer surface, which in this case is going to be this black rub rail here, we need 1.5 inches of clearance. Don't skimp, because if we run into anything or under heavy conditions, this guy is going to flex a little bit. That's why I believe that they give us that 1.5 inch requirement for clearance here. Second would be in this case, and as a lot of times on these flats boats, we have a power outlet here that the manufacturer was kind enough to put here for us, so that has got to fit into the matrix as well too. Other points of clearance are going to be travel for this guy when she's stowed. We want to make sure that we have a nice angle that's going to work good, but we also need to make sure that we're keeping the head of this guy outboard so that we don't want to remove real estate for footwork in here. We need to be able to walk around. You know, the owner, you or the owner of the boat is going to want as much real estate up here as they can. So everything is a compromise. They teach us that in ABYC and NMEA courses. Every install is a compromise. So this is where you really want to get everything lined up where you're happy. Make sure everything is going to clear. Measure twice, cut once. Get this thing exactly where it goes.
Want to make sure that we are not lining this trolling motor outside of the rub rail on the boat. So when coming up to a dockside or trailering or just moving the boat around objects, you are not slamming this head of the trolling motor, the brain unit of this trolling motor, against anything and damaging it. So you want to make sure it's inside the clearance of the rub rail of the boat.
Yeah, excellent. Good point. Maybe even an inch or two inside, and just because people have elbows when you're pulling up from the ramp, when you're walking down the boat. Excellent point, excellent point. We don't want this to snag on anything or something to snag on it. So we have a little trick that we like to do with these things that we think is pretty cool. Once we get this guy kind of where we think we want it, this is a two-man operation. So Jake will probably come around here just to kind of demonstrate. Once we know, and we've already traced this one out so we kind of know, but the trick is once you've got it right where you think you want it or where you need it, you're gonna have one person lift up on the trolling motor and someone with some sort of hard device tapping the inside to cause that puck. And you wanna come as straight up, and he is gonna make sure that the puck is gonna fall straight out of its socket. And that is pretty much, it's gonna stay as long as he can visually verify that it didn't move when I lifted it up. It's in its spot. Then you can start looking at your final set of qualifiers, which is gonna be clearance. This particular boat has a rolled cap, which means it's exposed, and the first two sets of holes are going to be exposed and they're going to drop down here. We're gonna have two actually up under the deck here with big washers that are gonna be on the underside of the boat. So two out, two will be external, two will be internal, and that is pretty common these days, especially again with these rolled caps, that's what we're dealing with. So then at that point, we're basically, this guy's gonna be where it needs to be. We're gonna take a pencil or a pen, which we've already done. We're gonna trace this guy out so we know where she goes. And then we're gonna take one of our mounting bolts, all while making sure that this doesn't move even a millimeter. We're gonna go down inside of the holes and we're gonna screw this guy in to disturb the tape. We wanna basically, it'll strip the tape off in the 4 spots. So we've done that already. And what we're left with are these great little guide holes. We know exactly where to run the drill down. And we're going to run a good pilot hole. Then we're gonna step it up to one size over 1/4 inch so that we have enough clearance. We don't actually want the bolts biting. We want them to pass through, and the washers and the nuts and the fasteners underneath are what's gonna hold this guy down.
The last thing, and probably the most important thing when it comes to before you drill or before you cut into the boat, measure 3 times, drill or cut once. You want to make sure that everything is gonna fit. You can get clearance up underneath your nuts under your back bolts, and then you have enough space. You're gonna measure, take your tape measure from up top, measure down below, make sure you have enough clearance on these front bolts to get your washers and your nuts locked down on there on a flat surface so that you have a nice firm amount on this trolling motor.
So at this point, what we need to do is get these pilot holes drilled. We're gonna go a size over the 1/4, and we're gonna do the 5/16 size, so we don't want the bolts grabbing on the way down. We want them to pass through freely here. And Jake's gonna kind of show us how we're gonna get that done.
Okay.
So once we get the 2 front mounting holes drilled, we're going to drill the back ones. When drilling the back ones, make sure you are aware of the depth inside so you do not over drill and drill through the hull of the boat. So make sure you take a look underneath before drilling. You have enough clearance, you know what you're working with, and then go ahead and drill your 2 holes. While you're drilling, make sure you let the drill guide you and do the work. Straight up and down, and just let the drill do the work. Don't put too much pressure on it, just in case you do have a clearance issue below. Once she punctures through, you want to be in control and not let it go too far. After getting your 4 holes drilled, we are ready to move forward and get the mounted down onto the deck.
Jake has got this guy all set in, holes drilled. We've gone ahead and sized this. We've put the trolling motor on top, make sure everything is clear, everything is good. So now what we need to do is we need to seal this thing. Anytime we put a hole through the deck, we really need to put some good marine grade silicone there to keep the moisture out of the deck. The moisture is just no good. We don't want it in there. So let me show you how we do that. So now we're going to pull this thing off, get our silicone, and we're going to work a very small bit around our holes. I like to make a little circle around circular holes. We don't want water coming in. Just enough to where we think we're going to get the job done, not too much. We don't want to have too much on there, because if we do, there's going to be a bunch that's going to squeege out when we put this guy down and mount it down. And we'll talk about that in one moment. So let's go ahead and get this guy where she's going to be. Try to keep the bolts as clean as we can on the way through, which never happens. I'm going to press this fella into place here. If we get any that squeeges out, if I did a good job, there won't be a whole lot. But if I did, I'm going to let the stuff dry first, and then I'm just going to basically take a razor or a utility knife, and I'm just going to trim it off nice and neat. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get these washers and nuts on these first 2 forward bolts. So as you can see, of course, we've got the silicone. We have a small bit that is leaked out, which is absolutely fine. What we don't want to do is just start wiping this stuff off. We're going to let it dry, and then we're going to take a utility knife or a razor knife, and we're going to delicately just trim that stuff off after it dries. We're ready to move into the final stage of fitting and checking for clearance on this trolling motor. Jake was nice enough to volunteer to monkey down under the deck and get a wrench behind these bolts on the nuts so we could get these rear 2 fastened. So this guy's completely installed now. So now we need to check for fit and clearance. We're going to go ahead and pop this up on the puck. We're going to take our channel bracket, which locks this into place, through the mounting bracket and through the trolling motor. Comes with a cotter pin, very important. For security, if you want, you can use a lock for this, a little small padlock. But we're going to put this in here for now, and she's secure. Very, very strong. Let's go ahead and check for clearance. Clearance is excellent. Minimal wobble. Everything's looking pretty good to me. And she's secured. Final step now is going to be to simply get power to this guy, which we're going to do with this cable through the Minn Kota trolling plug adapter here. We need to get the plug installed, and then that's going to plug into here, and then we should be fully functional as far as power and installation will be complete on the trolling motor.
First, we want to test voltage, that we've got good voltage going to the plug. So I'm going to take my multimeter. This is a 24 volt trolling motor, so we hope to have 24, 8 or more volts on this trolling motor at the plug. So you're going to test the negative and positive ends. And I am getting 25.7 volts, which means we have plenty of power going to this plug. After testing that, we'll remove the plug here, and we can begin the process of installing the plug on the trolling motor. On this plug, there is labeling 1, 2, and 3 according to the directions. 1 is negative, 2 is positive. So the black wire into port number 1, the red wire into number 2. Prep your wires. We use Lanacoat, which is a corrosion inhibitor, and we are going to dip both these wires into that. You want to make sure when tightening these wires down that they are very firmly on there. These plugs require quite a bit of force and torque on these screws to keep these wires in place. You do not want these coming out. You don't want to prevent it. You want to prevent a fire or a short. So when installing the trolling motor and running the wire to feed the plug, it is very important, according to ABYC standards and NEMA standards, that we use the correct size gauge of wire. Now that we have the trolling motor plug installed on the trolling motor, we're going to go ahead and test it for power. Twist the plug into its home and hit the power button on the trolling motor, and we've got good power. The rest of this we're going to test on the water.